Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. To Geeks Talking is an entertainment industry interview show where we interview the creative people from the comic, film, TV, movie, and video game industries. And of course, I'm your host, Kurt Sasso. We are joined by a returning guest. He has been on the show many times. I think this is his, maybe your fifth time, Doc, possibly.
I'm not sure, fourth or fifth.
Fourth
Yeah,
or fifth.
yeah.
You're up there. You're almost in the five-timer club, if that's the case. Stealing Saturday Night
I should
Live.
be here more often then. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, next year. As I said, he has been on the show before. You know him as Doc. You know him, of course, as the creator of Callous Comics. He is, of course, Dr. Carlo and Juan, also known as Kaz. Thanks for coming back on the show, Doc. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, and thank you for having me.
It's like I said, fourth or fifth time. You got to come back every year now. Of course, we wouldn't have you on the show if you didn't have something wonderful to bring to our attention. Because as I was made aware of through Twitter and all that stuff, you have an amazing anniversary coming up. Please tell us what that is for you.
So my comic strip series is celebrating its 24th anniversary. That's Callous, Callous Comics. It's a comic strip about a doctor who happens to have a guardian duck. Yeah, it's been a wonderful 24 years. I would never have imagined myself lasting this long, but it is what it is. It's become first it started out as a hobby, and then it became this huge thing online, and then it became this huge thing in the newspapers as well. So it's been a fantastic journey. It's more than a passion. It's more than a business to me now. Every anniversary I try to celebrate somehow. Like I try to promote maybe artists who are starting off by having them do guest art or whatever. But with the current pandemic, I wanted to be a little bit more proactive and do something that's a bit closer to my heart as well. As you mentioned, I think you did mention it. I am a doctor. I'm a physician, a medical physician. So I have been busy, and I wanted to support my our brave frontliners as well. Over here in my country, there's been a shortage of personal protective equipment, and a good friend of mine, who was actually the best man in my wedding, he's been running this program called Oplan Malasakit, and that's mean Operation Caring or Operation Devotion or giving a crap about something, and he's been going through the motions of purchasing through donations PPEs for these frontliners. So kind of picking up the slack that the people who should be providing these things for our frontliners are. I kind of lost myself in a sentence, but yeah, and he that's Dr. Tiger Garrido, and he actually inspired one of the characters in my comic, Dr. Tiger Kaiserslautern. And he's been doing a great job, and I wanted to support his efforts by using my comics anniversary as a fund drive for Oplan Malasakit, and in the effort to purchase more PPEs and to be able to donate them to our brave frontliners. I do understand why there are shortcomings in the response, no matter what country you're from, because it is a totally new thing. It's a virus that nobody truly understands yet. So yeah, people will complain and stuff, but you got to understand as well that it's a totally new thing.
Well, let's kind of quickly dive into that, and we'll
Sure.
dive back into the comic. Obviously, now being a physician that you are, and being working on the lines, the front lines that you do, you're seeing the day-to-day aspect of this virus from a very close personal level. How has it been since it first got noticed to the current situation?
Mm-hmm. I can only speak for how it has been here in the Philippines. And I guess around late January, that's when people started to really take attention to it, because at least geographically, we're quite close to China, where it all began. And we do have a lot of travelers, whether for business or for leisure, from that country, and there was a lot of concern because we would see on social media the lockdown over at Wuhan, and so there was actually a comic convention right at the peak of concern, and the comic convention actually did a good job. They had hand cleansing stations all over the place, and they were encouraging the use of masks and everything. So as far as I know, no one actually got the virus at that comic convention. So, but at that point, the main excuse me, the main thrust of what we have been telling people to do is to simply wash your hands, wear a mask if you're sick, and I would say if everyone followed that, then we wouldn't be in the spot that we are. But unfortunately, well, for one thing, information dissemination wasn't that great. So not everybody knew that there was a virus. Not everybody knew that you had to really take care of your hygiene by washing your hands properly and wearing a mask if you're sick. So the numbers started going up, and at a rate that caused quite a bit of concern. And our government, and I would agree with their choice, is they started this enhanced community quarantine over here in the capital region, and eventually it spread out to the rest of the country at varying levels. They've been refusing to use the word lockdown, but we pretty much just on the offhand would just say, "Oh, we're in lockdown," but apparently, technically, we're not.
Shelter in place, right? Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So pretty much, yeah, just stay at home if you don't have to do anything
Right.
Urgent. But yeah, with this community quarantine, businesses did have to close, like restaurants and shopping malls and all that. So the economy pretty much did go into a standstill here.
And pretty much everywhere.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But and the same with everywhere. Hospitals and emergency rooms became really, really busy, and it really dawned on at least here in the medical community that we're really tackling something truly unprecedented and really serious. And I believe here we have one of the highest infection rate among frontliners. And one of the main reasons for that is we didn't have enough of the personal protective equipment that they require. And so a lot of nonprofit organizations really try to support and get donations so that they could purchase these PPEs for frontliners, because there's a true shortage. And a lot of the things that you would expect with these type of crises did happen. There was a panic. There was a lot of panic buying. We also had a shortage of toilet paper for some reason, and there was a lot of hoarding, unfortunately, of not just food but personal protective equipment that should have been going to the frontliners. But it seemed to be the case all over the world. So natural human response, I guess.
Well, going back to the comic itself, obviously, one of your main character is a doctor, and she has a guardian duck. Obviously, the last comic you put out is kind of telling of how I'm sure not only you feel, but everyone else and all over the world is dealing with this, especially those at the front line. Yeah. And it was rather touching to see. Not only that, but you could hear the weariness and the tiredness in Ryan's voice there.
Yeah. I actually made that comic really early on because I'm not in emergency medicine, but a lot of my friends are, and they've been posting online, and I've been there. You know, I've worked in an emergency room, and I felt that tiredness and weariness. But I can only imagine just how extreme the emotions and the physical exhaustion is now. Um, so I made that comic strip as a heartfelt dedication to our frontliners, and um, I could really feel what they were going through. And that's early on, and it just got worse from there. A lot of our colleagues had unfortunately fallen, and it had been a rough time. But on the bright side, I would say things are starting to get a little bit better,
That's good.
but we're not out of the woods yet. That's
No.
for sure.
I think it's still premature, even though I know many countries are slowly reducing their measures to allow businesses and people to remain open, or at least to businesses to open up and people to kind of resume their daily lives, go back to work, etc. I still personally think it's still way too early. I know countries like Germany and other countries, even states across the border there, have reduced their restrictions, and it's exploded once more onto the scene. So it's still going to be a ways away, I believe, till it's truly beaten, I guess. And it takes, the frontliners, and it takes the countries doing their research on trying to beat this to find a vaccine, etc. To do what they can. And I'm glad that there's a charity, at least, especially in the Philippines, as well as I'm sure many other countries are doing similar things, but I'm glad we're focusing on the Philippines itself to do what we can to help them out.
Yeah, it's been really heartwarming. How people there are people out there that are really trying to um, recognize our common humanity and bring people together to fight this thing. And it really brings a smile on my face to see such things happen. So there is a bright side. You know me. I mean, you know my comic. I always look at the bright side of things, but there truly is a bright side. You could really see the good in the world when things like this happen.
For sure. And it's great to see. But you've had Callous comic. You've been doing this for 24 years. You obviously, this is a long running comic. This is probably one of the longest running comics, even longer than the original four webcomicers from PvP and all that stuff. I think you're longer running than definitely Scott Kurtz, that's for sure. Or you're pretty darn close, but it's a good
well
thing.
I'm you really shouldn't compare me to those guys, but yeah,
Oh,
that is true. It is long running. That's all I'll say.
Speaking of the other comics, because I'm just gonna segue this as it goes. When we last talked, you were just finishing issue 1 of M.O.U.S.E. That's how long ago.
Oh, really?
Been. Yes.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
So what's been going on with M.O.U.S.E?
All right. So M.O.U.S.E is actually an acronym for Multiple Ordnance and Utility Synthetic Entity. It's about a robotics and cybernetics student who ends up becoming an intern in a mad scientist laboratory, and it's geared toward a younger audience than most of my other comics. And I created this comic in partnership with a manga-inspired artist, Pilar, who was a guest here, wasn't she? Yeah.
Yes, she was.
And just during this quarantine, I actually finished writing the 3rd issue.
Oh, geez.
And
I'm a little behind.
Yeah. It's been running slow, and not just because we both have our own things going on. Not just in comics, but our actual jobs. So, but yeah, since there was this downtime, I really have focused on writing, and I finished the 3rd issue. So Pilar is working on it now. So awesome. We hope to have it done in time for. I can't even think of events nowadays, but we're hoping that Comic-Con, spelled with K's, is will happen toward the end of the year, and we hope to launch it there. And we also hope to be bringing it to Singapore Comic Con again.
Oh, sweet.
Singapore Comic Con has been fantastic the past few years, and I'm really making a point to put it in my schedule because it's been that fantastic.
So what is I've never been to, obviously I haven't been overseas. I've never been to the Philippines. I've
Uh-huh.
done very little traveling, unfortunately, and I really do love traveling. But what is a Comic Con in the Philippines like?
Oh, you know what? I'll tell you what. I've been to Comic Con in Singapore. One in the United States. I've been in Emerald City Comic Con for 3 years in a row,
That'd be nice.
and no, I have been, and I'll tell you, it's more or less the same. Uh, and that's a wonderful thing. I mean, geekdom is a common language to everyone, and uh, obviously, when I first did a comic convention in the U.S., I was afraid that how different it might be, and it turned out, whatever I did that worked here in the Philippines or in Singapore worked in the U.S. as well. It's a wonderful feeling, and uh, I'd like to try to bring my work to other countries as well in their comic conventions. I don't know when that'll be with everything that's going on, but I'd like to see more of that, that common humanity, that common love for pop culture. It's truly a wonderful thing to see, and I think I have a nice, unique perspective in that, the being in 3 countries already, um, and I'd like to see more because it's truly a heartwarming thing to experience.
No, I love the fact that you have such a wide range from Callous to, of course, M.O.U.S.E, and of course Immortal Wings, which we'll touch on as well too. But I mean, you have a great broad spectrum for all audiences, and not only
Mm.
great art styles that you find great artists like Pilar, and you have great writing overall too. So your
Hmm.
arcs and your
Oh,
stories.
thank you.
That's why we've been friends for this long, because I just love your work.
Oh, thank you so much, and I
Well,
love your work as well. This has been a fantastic podcast.
well, I do what I can, and quit. Come back on the show. You flattered me enough, so we'll have you back on.
Awesome.
Flattery will get you everywhere. At least, yeah, because I can't believe it. It's been 2 issues now since M.O.U.S.E, which is crazy because I remember Pilar coming on the show, and she was really found her art style, I think, with M.O.U.S E, at least
Hmm.
from what I saw from her past work, which
Yeah.
is still blows my mind. I can't wait to see how she's improved over these past few years too. That would be awesome to see.
Well, that's the thing. When I first met Pilar, I recognized immediately that her art had its had its own voice. I mean, um, I wasn't really looking for anyone who could draw like Jim Lee or draw like someone else. But when you see her work, you could recognize that she's the one who drew it, and I really liked it about it. Although, yes, early on, you could tell that she was still finding her footing,
Mhm.
but she's really grown a lot as an artist over the years, and that voice is still there, and I love it. I love it. I love that aspect of her work.
Talk about Immortal Wings, because I know you're a writer on that, and I
Hmm.
apologize, but it's been a while since I remember who the artist was for that.
No worries. Well, my co-creator and illustrator for Immortal Wings is Rod Espinosa,
Oh,
and
that's right, Rod. Damn.
yeah, yeah.
So I apologize, Rod. I do know you. I remember you. I apologize.
Yeah, and he's been busy. He's been doing his own thing, Adventure Finders,
Mhm.
and I believe, yes, he does have a new publisher for it, and
Okay.
so it has. Well, I don't know about now, but it had been coming out in print for quite some time, and um, yeah, he's been doing great with Immortal Wings. We had been planning to do a sequel to it with a new artist,
Hmm.
but I'm been have this is my fault now. I've been having a bit of a tough time bringing the writing together.
Hmm.
Um, uh, getting the pacing and the everything right. That's something that I take a lot of attention to, pacing of my writing, and just getting it all right has been a bit tough. I don't know. It's something to do with how my brain works, and but I'm quite confident that that I'll get there, and um, and I do believe that what we have envisioned for the sequel is quite exciting, and it will please a lot of our fans.
Oh, good. Now, is there, when it comes to obviously writing, because I'm where you're at right now with the series I've been creating for the past few
Hmm.
years. For me, it's like you get these spurts of energy when it comes to writing. Sometimes you just get an idea
Yeah.
and you just run with it. Other times it's just like, I'm trying to do this. I really want to get this done. I want to get this arc done or this chapter done. I got nothing. Like, how do you deal with that stuff?
Oh yeah, yeah, that's definitely a tough thing, and I believe it's something that all writers go through. Um, with the comic strip, with Callous, it's a little bit easier because
Only 4
um,
years.
yeah. Because I essentially have a pool of scripts that whenever the wave of inspiration does come on, I do collect everything that I can, so that when I do have a downtime, when I do have a writer's block, I guess, I have that pool that I can go back into and extract a gag or two for it. With M.O.U.S.E and Immortal Wings, it's a little bit tougher because, for one thing, it takes longer to write because it is a longer comic. The pacing is definitely different compared to a comic strip, um, and it's something that I had to learn on the fly as I was writing M.O.U.S E and Immortal Wings, getting that that pacing right. And I think I was quite successful with the first volume of Immortal Wings and M.O.U.S E.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is a tough thing. I do end up having to wait for that wave of inspiration to come in. I'm not at the point where uh, uh, the real pro writers do it, because they can write month in month out, and I'm not at that point yet. Though I do, uh, getting your mind in that world, when you have another world to take care of, is a bit difficult, and I totally understand that. Um, and yeah, it's a tough thing. I don't have an answer, unfortunately, on how to solve it. But that is an exercise that I do. I do have to get my mind into that world, into these characters again after being out in the real world,
Yeah.
and it's a bit of a shift. Uh, I don't really know how to explain it, and it's true even with Callous. Um, when I'm working, I do. The nice thing is, thematically, my real job and my other real job do meet in that they are both medically themed. Oh, it's not really a theme for the other one; it's its actual thing. But I'm able to get inspiration from my work as a physician to write Callous. But the actual production of the comic strip, there is this mental shift that I can't really explain, from I guess a science based way of thinking to getting into that very fluid, getting into the zone, I guess,
Yeah.
and making the comic strip. There is this mental shift that I go through that I can't really explain, but it's there. And sometimes it's easy, sometimes it takes a little bit of mental effort, and at least for me, I can't speak for all artists, of course, but but that's something that I do have to go through. That's really interesting as well, when I get all introspective like this. It's an interesting shift.
As long as you don't stay in your head too much, then it's it's all right then. But,
Oh, I
um,
have my wife and kids
well,
to get me back into.
focus. Just like
Yeah.
um, after all this time, after all that you've done, after all that you've seen, especially with Callous, I mean, have you reached the limit of what you can do with Callous, or do you think that you have so much more to offer and to do when it comes to the comic?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? Um, I do believe that there are more things I can do with the comic strip. Um, as to how to get there is a bit tough, but me getting into the newspapers was a huge thing for me, and going beyond that is something that is an even bigger leap that I'm that is totally possible. I think I've made enough connections to pull off through all the networking work that I do when I'm at a comic convention or a pop culture convention. But finding the time is always a challenge. I used to pride myself in how I manage my time, but it's been tougher and tougher as the years go by.
I'm sure it has. It's funny, because I just recently saw Cleopatra in Space got an animated
I
series,
know, right? That's
which looks
fantastic.
it
Yeah.
looks amazing. I saw the trailer for it; it looks beautiful. I'd love to see Callous as an animated series. I think that would be like the epitome of what you could do.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. And I would love to pull it off. I mean, yeah, with even with Cleopatra in Space, that now that you bring it up, I mean, I was reading that as a web comic
Yeah,
way
yeah,
back when, and it had gone through it became a book series and then became an animated series. It's just wow.
I know.
I'm speechless when I think about that. And there are other web comics that I wish would get the same treatment, and I'm really hoping mine would be one of them.
Actually, that's a good question. Out of the webcomics that I'm sure we both have read over the decades that we've been doing this, what do you think would be a good, besides your own, a good
Mhm.
webcomic to go to animation?
Well, for one thing, I'm really a really big fan of Eddie Pittman's Red's Planet, and I
Mm.
think it'd be not just an animated series, but I think it'd make a great animated movie.
Oh,
There was an old one um, by Kanan Graal.
oh yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Cannon Grow. Yeah,
Celador was a
I think
back
so.
when what was that? There was this one web comic platform that everyone was jumping into way back when.
Oh, Drunk Duck.
No, no, no. Zuda. Do you
Oh,
remember Zuda?
oh wow, yeah. That's geez, you're really going back.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. So Celador was Kenan Graal's thing over at Zuda, and it was one of the first web comics I read, so it does have a nice place in my heart. And I was a big fan of it while it was running, and I think it would make a good series.
if I
Um,
see him at the comic conventions, I'll have to ask him about that one.
oh, that's right. He's Canadian, isn't
Yeah,
he?
yeah. He's
Yeah,
I
yeah,
see him at
yeah.
Fan Expo all the time. He's still
Oh,
doing great
wow.
work. Yeah,
Awesome. Yeah, he does a Max over Axe, which
yeah.
I think would be a good series
I
as
think
well.
that'd be cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. I think for me, there was one that was I don't think it's in production anymore, or if it is, it's really
Hmm.
because it was one of my first as well. Was Mega Tokyo
Yeah,
by
yeah, yeah.
Fred. I can't remember his last name. Anyhow, by
Oh,
he
I remember another one. Sorry.
go.
This one's actually based in Mexico. It was Tinkers of the Wasteland by what was his name? Raul Trevino. And I'm a huge fan of his. He has a fantastic following over in Mexico, and he's been showing up in the U.S. as well. I first met him at New York Comic Con.
Oh really?
Yeah, and I saw him again at Emerald City Comic Con when I was in its artist alley. Uh, but yeah, I'm a huge fan of his work. He has another webcomic going on. The name escapes me, unfortunately, but he publishes it on Webtoon, and it's apparently doing really well.
Nice.
Live Forever or Live Forever. It's a bit of a thing because it's about a singer who's singing live, a punk rock band and stuff. So I'm not sure if it's supposed to be Live Forever or Live Forever, but yeah, it's a good comic. It comes out on Webtoon, and yeah, it's by Raul Trevino, and I really love his work. But yeah, it's his earlier work that I'm more familiar with, though, Tinkers of the Wasteland.
Cool. Yeah, there's so many from when webcomics started, like back in the, obviously it was roughly around the 80s, so to speak, maybe a little earlier, but depending on
Yeah.
8-bit graphics and all that other stuff. but it really took off in the 90s, and there's been some really good documentaries about webcomics and the comic print and all that other stuff too. But when it comes to the creation of these comics, you've done it for so long. Is there anything that's changed besides the medium itself for you?
Yeah, the business model has changed a lot. Yeah, how I used to do it. There was a time when I placed a lot of focus of my comics income from its online readership, and that's how pretty much all of us did it way back in the late 2000s, maybe around 2009, 2010, and but that has shifted dramatically on how to earn from online readership. I mean, now we have stuff like Patreon, and even the webcomic hosts do their own thing now, like through Tapas and through Webtoon. They actually pay pay these webcomic artists based on how much readership they get. But my focus on my comics income has shifted away from its online earnings. I do well, for one thing, the newspaper pays me, and that's
good.
Yeah, and I'm very grateful for that. And also as book selling, that has been a wonderful source of income. Speaking of, I had just launched a new book last February, the last comic convention I was in. It's probably not the right year to launch a book, but what can we do, right?
Yeah.
So it's this one. I wonder if you can see it.
Yep, I can see it.
Yeah.
Toxic.
So toxic, but everything's fine. Yeah, and it had a fantastic launch over at Comiket last February. Way better than I could have ever imagined. I mean, I brought stocks for its 2 days, and by the end of the first day, I had one copy left, and it was fantastic. I couldn't believe it. Then the same happened the second day. I had to bring more. I normally would just leave whatever stocks I had left, but I ended up having to bring more from home. So it's a fantastic launch, and yeah, I do have it available for purchase online, but unfortunately, I don't know how to pull that off with the current.
You don't know how to ship it yet, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, here it is. Yeah, toxic, but everything's fine.
It's good. I like that. Now, is that your what book number is that now?
This would be the 5th, at least when it comes to the gag comic strips. This would be the 5th collection. But I do have the standalone fantasy storylines. I still have a few copies of those. And another thing is I've been working on for several years already another fantasy storyline that I've been talking about every now and then on online. But working on it has been slow because whatever comic energy that I've been putting into the daily comic strip and onto writing M.O.U.S.E and writing the Immortal Wings. And but it's chugging along. So anyway, yeah, the next fantasy storyline is called Rainfall, like REIGN fall. and um, it's a it's a real interesting story that I really hope to get out there as soon as I can.
I can't wait.
Yeah,
I've always loved your arcs as it is, and you really
awesome.
put
Thank
a
you.
lot of
Yeah.
really cool energy and action usually into those as well too. So I'm looking forward to this.
Hmm.
Um,
Thank you.
just crazy. You've been doing this for so long. You've kept up with it when a lot of people would just stop doing it. What still drives you to do this?
Well, I just have that part of me that needs to get these stories out. It's I've said it before. It's an itch that I have to scratch. It's this creative side of me, and I'm very grateful that I have these opportunities to do it. Not everyone can say that. Uh, but then again, if there's anyone out there that does have that itch, there's more media than ever to channel all that energy. Um, yes, there's web comics, and there's it's easier than ever to get a web comic out there. Um, you don't even necessarily have to put out your own website, although I still believe that's a wise thing to do. If anyone who wants to get into this is afraid that they're not good enough, I mean, you just have to get started, and you just have to keep at it, keep practicing. I mean, anyone, any comic producer started out um, not as good as they are today. So someone just has to start, get it done, get it out there. As the Nike ads say,
Just do
you
it.
have to just do it. Yeah. And then keep at it.
Or if you keep watching Shia LaBeouf, just do it.
Just do it.
I'm going to ask the last four questions then here. But before
Okay.
we do that, though, is there anything that I haven't touched on that you want to share or talk about?
Oh, I haven't really gotten into detail on on how this guest art.
Oh, yeah, that would kind of be a good thing to talk about. My bad. Go ahead. How does this guest art work?
Oh yeah, you go ahead. You ask the question, and I'll.
No. I just did. Like, how does the guest art work?
Yeah, so if you are interested in helping out with not just with the 24th anniversary celebration, but to help our brave frontliners, you could just submit uh, the guest art. What's actually going to happen is you are going to make the middle panel of a 3-panel comic strip. So I believe someone else had did this in the past. I might have gotten the idea from someone else, where they had a guest artist do the middle panel, and then they had to write the first and the third panel um, based on what that guest artist. Oh, now I remember. Bill Watterson actually made the middle panel of a few Pearls Before Swine comic strips. And yeah, that's pretty much where I got the idea. So guest artists can do the middle panel, and I'll have to write the first and third panel of that comic strip based on what you submit. So it'll be an interesting challenge for me,
Nice.
writing wise and art wise, and it'll be really interesting to see what people would submit. And the deadline for that would be in the June 30, because I plan to have 31 of these comic strips ready to be done for publication in August. August is when the actual anniversary is. And yeah, so I'm really looking forward to that. So what happens is 100% of the income I get from the newspaper, I'll be donating that to Oplan Malasakit, and I'll be adding a little bit of extra on top of that as well as a personal donation. And yeah, but at least comic wise, it'll be fun, and I'm looking forward to see what people submit, if anyone will submit. But yeah, it'll be fun.
I'm sure they will. I think especially with the way the world is and the way that this
Uh,
this charity is going, they humanity would be in dire straits if they didn't start helping out people. And obviously, as you said before, and especially earlier on in the interview, people are coming together no matter what country they're from, no matter what nationality they are. So it's a good thing to see, and this is a great charity to donate time and money towards. So I'm glad at least you're on the show to talk about it. So that works out well.
Yeah. So the submission details, like the image size and all that, where to submit it, it's all on my website, callouscomics.com, at the blog portion. It's the latest blog post.
Everyone has one or two people that kind of inspired them on their path to where they are today. Who was that for you?
Ooh, it's several people, actually. The first one that really got me into this path, that really formed the dream of being a newspaper comic strip artist, is Jim Davis. When I was much younger, he had released this, it's kind of like a documentary, but it's an anniversary special. I believe it was their 10th anniversary TV special, where he was showing how the comic strip was made, and the history of Garfield, and him hanging out with other people at the National Cartoonist Society, I guess. And it was just it just sparked the dream. As for art wise, of course, or at least the quality that I try to achieve. You have the big three. You have Garfield, Peanuts, and Calvin and Hobbes. I'd like to throw Pogo in there as well, and that's what I. Writing wise and a little, I guess, art style wise, I do try to achieve that level of quality, because the humor that they have is timeless, and that's what I try to achieve, even with something as topical as medicine is. I try my very best that even if you read my stuff maybe 10, 20 years from now, it would still apply. It's the human experience that I'm trying to relay through my comics. Another art-wise, Hergé, who does Tintin, was a huge inspiration, both with how he colors his comics and his line work as well. That whole ligne claire style that was big in Europe. I try to do through in my comic as well. And as for getting your work out there, I really look up to Brad Geiger and his crew. I really and locally, the late Jerry Alangilan, how he manages himself was a big inspiration, and he was a good friend to many of us Filipino comic artists. He was pretty much like the godfather of us for a time, and he unfortunately passed away last year. Who else? A real powerhouse when it comes to our independent Filipino comics is the duo of Budget Dan and Kajo Baldissimo. They co-created a series called Trece, and that was actually picked up by Netflix to turn into an anime. So that's like huge, and even before the cartoon, they were how they managed themselves, how they marketed themselves in comic conventions and online was a big inspiration. And but all the more now that they have a Netflix series coming out, it's huge. And I was actually hanging out with Budget. He's actually based in Denmark now, and when I was doing some further training for my doctor work over in Switzerland, I did swing by and hang out with him for a day.
Nice.
So yeah, it was a lot of fun, and just can you imagine that having your comic picked up by Netflix to turn into to be animated by a Japanese studio to that's huge, and coming it's a Filipino comic. Like I had to ask him, like, how did you do that? And yeah, he did go into a bit of detail. It was a lot of there had to be that one person in the industry who really believed in your property, uh, and it was a long slog of getting getting it out there. Um, Hopefully there is someone in that industry that would find my work and really believe in it that much to work at it. I think it took them maybe 10 to 15 years of just, pushing and pushing to get it out there. And uh, finally there was that opportunity through Netflix, and they got it.
I mean, you also have Amazon Prime and a few others as well too, but Netflix isn't too
Yeah,
bad.
yeah,
Yeah, it's not.
yeah. Well, I mean, you can't be choosy,
It's
but
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure it's all right. Yeah. Uh,
Well, now that you bring it up, Amazon Prime hasn't been that big here yet. So, but it is available, although not many people know about it. They haven't really been advertising over here as much as Netflix has. Netflix is all over the place here in the Philippines. They have big banner ads along the highway and stuff. People have really they're really visible. But Amazon Prime, not,
not so
first of
much.
all, Amazon is they're not based here. Even with the online shopping and stuff. Not many people go to Amazon for that here, and so that name recognition that they're banking on, with their streaming service, it just doesn't. It hasn't worked here yet. But I am subscribed to it because I wanted to watch Good Omens and stuff, uh, and what was the other show that was also on Amazon Prime?
Uh, I've
It
watched a
escapes me.
ton recently. Jack Ryan it was a good show, and a few
Oh, there
others.
was an anime. There was an anime on
Oh
the
yeah.
Blade of the Immortal anime
Yes,
was
yes, yes.
exclusive to Amazon Prime. So that was another thing that was
Wait, the anime or the live action?
the anime is exclusively on Amazon Prime.
Okay, I have
The
to look
live
that up.
action movie is actually distributed over here by Netflix. So yeah, it's interesting. But the anime, at least, I had to see it through Amazon Prime.
Actually, I do want to see that because I saw the live action version of it. And it was incredible. I thought it was
Oh
really
yeah,
well
yeah, yeah.
done. Like,
The live action one, I really enjoyed the first three fourths of because I'm a huge fan of the comic. It's one of those the comic series it is in my top three. I love it that much, and at least for the first three fourths of the live action movie, they were quite faithful. I understand why they decided to do things the way they did in the movie because
mm,
they didn't know if they were going to have more opportunities to explore stories further on.
right.
So I guess they did have to end it right then and there. But yeah, it wasn't. The ending wasn't faithful to the comic series. So
Okay.
as usual, oh, the book's better. That's the usual thing.
You're one of those
Um,
guys. Yeah. I
yeah.
get it.
At least for Blade of the Immortal, I definitely am. But although I am understanding of why they decided to do things the way they did.
Mm,
But with the anime, the new anime at least, there was a 2008 anime that I was a fan of. I liked it. Um, but they really kept the art style for this new anime. Um, and they stayed faithful to the manga all the way to the end. It's quite impressive how they've compressed all that story into one season. Um, that being said, it did feel a bit rushed.
Where it could have gone on for like 5 or 6 seasons, they just no, you just get one. There you
Yeah, I know, but I think they did a good job. At least for a newcomer who didn't read the comic, I think it's a good place to go.
I'm still waiting for Bleach to finish off when it comes to the anime. It's been like almost God. 2006 is when the anime ended, and they finally, I think, they finished the last arc in the manga.
Hmm.
So they're finally animating it. I think it's going to be released like next year sometime.
Wow.
So
Okay.
I'm looking forward to that because it just came up on Netflix. Ironically, it's just like, yeah, I'm just going to rewatch this. That was great series, great music, and all that stuff.
It is. I did start it off, but I haven't really been following it.
Yeah, the
But yeah, I've been watching tons of anime
oh
during
yeah, I know.
quarantine. It's been crazy.
It's it's like, okay, if Amazon Prime doesn't have it, I'm going to go Netflix. If Netflix doesn't have it, I'm just going to go to my streaming box and figure something out. But I can't. There's only so many anime I can watch. I can't do
I
the
know
English version.
there just aren't enough hours in a day to to watch all that you want to watch.
Yeah, that's what staying up late's for, right? I mean, no.
What better time to do it than
It's
now? I
yeah,
mean, yeah.
it's 3 a.m. I can watch another episode. We're good. Bloodshot eyes later. It's great. Obviously, for the past 24 years, you've been very successful in what you've been doing when it comes to your comics itself. Uh, the 3 comics you've worked on, rather. You've gone to many comic conventions. You're a professional doctor, and you've done many things in your life. Do you consider yourself personally successful?
Uh, yes, I feel I've been doing better than most, uh, and that's based on um, and that's the fruit of just hard work um, and in other aspects of just being lucky. I was at the right place at the right time for a lot of these things, both in medicine and in comics. Um, but yeah, as one of my medicine mentors once told me, it's all about timing, really. Um, just being at the right place at the right time can do wonders. So it's important for people to be at places hoping it would be the time. How do I say that? Um, you basically just have to put yourself out there, hoping to get noticed by the correct set of eyes. That was my driving factor to being in these comic conventions, and at least when I started off, uh, I was networking a lot, and somehow that paid off to get me to the level where I am now. Although I don't believe that I have exhausted all the opportunities that I have ahead of me. There's still a lot of work to be done. There's still a lot of opportunities to grasp, I believe. So it is still important for me to be out there, be visible, and hoping to be noticed by the correct set of eyes. And um, and also, getting more readers through these events is still important to me. Uh, Meeting the actual readers who are already enjoying my work is also important. And meeting all these other wonderful creators has been a driving factor to me for going to these events. And uh, and also being a fan as well is a wonderful experience. Just last December at Singapore Comic Con, I finally got to meet what was his name, um, Greg Capullo,
Oh,
um, or Capullo. I'm not really sure how to pronounce his last name, but yeah, I actually brought a copy of Spawn 100 for him to sign, and because I learned my mistake from my experiences over in the U.S. where I wouldn't bring uh, comics to have signed. My first comic convention in the U.S. was Emerald City Comic Con 2017, I think, and it was when Image was having their big anniversary.
mm.
So yeah, Eric Larson, Todd McFarlane, Rob Liefeld, Will
couple of
Spartasio.
couple of good guys.
Yeah, these small names,
Yeah,
they
yeah,
were there. Yeah, but yeah, I got to meet them. I got to shake their hands and all that. But I didn't have any comics to have signed. Um, so going into this last convention that I had abroad over in Singapore, I knew that Greg Capullo was going to be there, so I had to bring something. So being a fan is nice. Um, but yeah, I still believe there's this isn't as high. This isn't the peak of what my work can achieve. So I'm still working to get there.
How do you deal with your failures?
Yeah, you just have to get back up. Um, it, it's very cliche, but it's very very true. Both in as a doctor and as a comic producer, you will fail. You will stumble. You will fall. But it's not about you falling. I mean, yes, as I mentioned, it is very cliche, but it's not about you falling. It's about you getting up from it and not falling the same way twice. Um, so as I mentioned earlier, you just have to keep chugging along. You know, keep on trucking. You gotta keep pushing yourself to be better than today than you were yesterday, and be even better still tomorrow. But as a to be even more cliche, as Yoda put it in his
Mm.
last live appearance, failure is the greatest teacher. And so I don't take my failures as an end, but as a lesson.
The younger generation, obviously, they're looking at your work and they're becoming inspired to either become a doctor or become a comic artist or become whatever
Mhm.
they feel is their creative endeavor or their passion in life. How can they inspire the generation that follows them?
Just by doing your absolute best every time. Uh, my father once told me that whatever you go into, you have to be the absolute best at it. That's what your that's what you have to strive to be. Um, I don't believe I'm the best, but that is what I try to do. To be at that level of excellence 100% of the time. Um, yeah, I might not be successful at achieving that, but um, striving to have that level in everything that you do, not just in comics or in medicine, is something that I take to heart, and um, I believe that's what feeds off into my readers, at least when they meet me personally, how I carry myself, what I've done to get to where I am. I think there have been at least one or two people who have expressed that it was my work ethic that got them inspired. Um, Although I'd like to think they like my work too.
I'm sure
But
they would.
yeah, yeah, well, yeah, they did. But there, I do remember a lot of people who do aspire to become physicians and uh, comic artists come up to me at these events, and they've expressed that that I'm somehow an inspiration to them. Um, but yeah, I do give out my advice on becoming a doctor and becoming a comic artist. Um, a lot of a lot of how do I put it? It's a lot of work, I guess. It's a lot of pushing yourself to be the best that you could possibly be, day in and day out, and it can be exhausting. There's no way around that. You will get tired and you will fail in one way or another. But yeah, like I said earlier, you just gotta keep at it.
See, I was envisioning Michael Caine in Batman, in the Batman Begins Christian Bale films. He says
But what did it say?
he says the exact line basically. It's like
Oh
it's
wow,
he literally says, Master Bruce, it's not how many times we fail, it's how many times we get back up.
I'm trying to remember. It's been a while since I've seen this movie.
Just
I might
do a
have
quick
gotten it from
YouTube
there
search,
for a
yeah.
long time.
But no, it's very true. Obviously, you've had a great work ethic in both careers that you've had. You have a
Mhm.
wonderful family, and you have a great overall life. And I hope you keep continuing to do what you're doing. And I just can't wait to see what you do next. Truly.
Awesome. Thank you. And I can't wait to be here again.
Five timer. Is there any social media or any other presence that we can find you on the internet to look at your work?
At Callous Comics on Twitter. And also on Instagram, I'm Callous Comics. That's Callous Comics. I have a website, callouscomics.com, and I also have a personal website, cartoonistcaz.com. That's cartoonistcaz.com. And what other social media is there?
I mean, Twitter, Instagram, blah, blah, blah. If you have Instagram, I don't know, but
yeah. On Instagram, you can find me as Callous Comics, and on Twitter, and
it's everywhere.
Yeah. I do have a Facebook page as a Callous the comic series. Yeah, you could find my I mirror my comic strip over in Tapas, tapas.io. So you could find Callous there.
Oh.
There are a couple more series that have the Callous title as well, but you should recognize which is mine quite easily.
I think so. Well, like I said, I do hate to say this, Doc, but obviously this is the end of the interview. It is a shame, truly it is, because you're always a joy to talk to. I can't wait.
Thank you. It's a joy to be here as well.
Not a problem. Anytime. I like I said, can't wait to see what you do in the future. Love to see what this new work is that you're going to do it on, whatever it's going to be on. And you really got to come back more often now, because obviously I missed 2 more issues of M.O.U.S E, so
right.
I feel bad about that, truly, but it is what it is. Of course, you can find TGT Media, this interview, Two Geeks Talking, and everything else on tgtmedia.com. Our YouTube channel is youtube.com/TGT Media. As I said previously, I still finally gained access to my old TGT Webcomics YouTube account, which had 240 interviews from past comic conventions.
Wow.
Like 10 years ago. Like it's that old. So I finally been able to download them all. I mean, I had a copy, but I just wanted to make sure I had an extra. But I will be trying to bring those over to the main YouTube channel. So you're going to see like a lot of creators that were just starting out way back when, that are pretty big names now in Marvel and DC and all that other stuff. Kind of a time capsule of sorts back in the day. As always, you can find myself on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram as @KurtSasso. And I just want to say thank you, everyone, for subscribing recently as well. I really do appreciate it. I've been doing this for almost 12 years now. August 8th, 2008 is when I started. And who knew that, thousands of interviews, either great people like Carlo and like everyone else that I've come on the show in the past, have really made it enjoyable to do. And I hope I keep doing this, maybe for another 12 years, which I still won't even catch up to what you've done, Doc, but it is what it is. Thanks again for listening and watching. Tune in next week for another great interview on Two Geeks Talking with whoever it is, because whoever they are going to be a creative force in whatever they do. Talk to y'all later.
Bye.